Ambassador Giwan felt her stomach twist as she looked at the broken aliens sitting around the metal table. The space station's briefing room was way too small for this many beings, but nobody cared about comfort right now. The wall screens kept flashing red numbers and maps showing destroyed planets across 3 different star systems. The Zephyrians looked terrible. These crystal people usually sparkled like diamonds, but now their bodies were cracked all over. Some pieces had even fallen off and were scattered on the floor. Next to them sat the bug-like Nixari, making that weird humming sound they did when their shared mind was freaking out. The worst were the luminants, though. These energy beings normally glowed so bright you needed special glasses to look at them. Now they barely gave off enough light to read by. G1 had never seen aliens look so scared before. In all her years as Earth's top diplomat, she'd dealt with angry aliens, proud aliens, even confused aliens, but never terrified ones. The Zephyrian leader tried to speak, but its voice came out like nails on a chalkboard. Every word sounded painful. Please, our combined fleets are gone. Completely destroyed. The Devourers eat everything in their path. Stars, planets, ships, even space itself somehow. We need your military help. Captain Huan sat beside Juwan, and she could see him fighting back a grin. His dark eyes were twinkling with some private joke. These aliens had spent the last 50 years calling humans dangerous primitives who needed to be watched carefully. They'd built their whole defensive strategy around keeping Earth contained. Now here they were, begging for help. G1 leaned back in her chair and raised an eyebrow. So let me get this straight. You want us primitives to handle what you're super? Advanced civilizations couldn't manage? The bug-like Nexar leader clicked its sharp mouth parts together. The sound meant embarrassment in their species. We may have miscalculated your species' true potential. That was the understatement of the century. Guan's fingers started tapping against the smooth surface under her sleeve without her even thinking about it. The quantum interface felt warm against her skin as data flowed directly into her brain. Through the AEGIS network, she was getting real-time analysis that made her want to burst out laughing. These so-called superior beings still had no clue that humanity had been quietly watching them for decades. Every fleet movement, every political meeting, every technological breakthrough. Earth's artificial intelligence network had been learning about alien weaknesses. While they argued about whether humans were too violent to join galactic society, the luminant delegate flickered brighter for a moment. Trying to look more impressive, the Devourers have consumed 17 star systems in the past month. They show no signs of slowing down. Our scientists estimate they'll reach the core worlds within 6 standard cycles. Giwan nodded thoughtfully, still receiving data streams. Through her hidden interface, Aegis was showing her everything. Battle recordings, energy signatures, even intercepted Devourer communications. The artificial intelligence had been studying these machine entities since their first appearance on the galaxy's edge. While the aliens panicked and threw ships at the problem, humanity had been doing what it did best: learning, adapting, and finding the weak spots. Your fleets tried direct confrontation, Juan observed. Beam weapons, kinetic projectiles, nuclear warheads. Very traditional approach. The Zephyrian leader's crystal form chimed sadly. Nothing worked. They absorbed our energy weapons and converted our projectiles into raw materials. Even our most powerful antimatter bombs only seemed to feed them. Captain Huyong finally spoke up, his voice carefully neutral. And you never considered that maybe you were fighting the wrong kind of war? The 3 alien delegates looked at each other with confusion. The Nexari swarm speaker buzzed with multiple voices at once. There is only one kind of war: you destroy the enemy before they destroy you. Giwan almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Through her neural link, she could sense Agiza analyzing every word, every gesture, even the electromagnetic patterns of their thoughts. The AI was practically purring with satisfaction. Everything was going exactly according to plan. She stood up slowly, her hands flat on the table. All 3 alien species focused on her with desperate hope in their eyes. They really believed humanity was their last chance, Had no idea they were about to witness something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "We'll handle it," she said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. The aliens blinked, flickered, and buzzed with confusion. They'd expected panic, rushed preparations, maybe demands for payment or political concessions. Instead, they got 2 words and a calm smile. The luminant delegate pulsed with agitation. "That's it? No questions about fleet sizes or strategic positions? No requests for our military databases?" Juan shrugged. "We have everything we need." Was true, though not in the way the aliens understood. Through the quantum network, she could feel AEGIS spreading across human space like digital wildfire. Processing nodes hidden in asteroid mines were coming online, quantum computers disguised, as weather satellites were linking together. Even the coffee machines on civilian transport ships were joining the network. Captain Hume stood up as well, finally letting his grin show. "You might want to get comfortable. This could take a few days." The aliens looked completely lost. They'd expected humanity to mobilize massive fleets, call up reserves, maybe even draft civilians. Instead, the 2 humans were acting like they'd just been asked to fix a leaky pipe as the delegates filed out of the briefing room. Still muttering among themselves, Jiwan felt the quantum interface pulse with new information. Aegis had finished its preliminary analysis of the Devourer threat. The results were exactly what she'd hoped for. These machine entities weren't unstoppable. They just required a different approach. While the aliens had been throwing bigger and bigger hammers at the problem, humanity was about to show them the power of thinking outside the box. The war was about to begin. But it wouldn't be the kind of war anyone expected. Director Minwoo loved his job, especially on days like this when he got to mess with alien minds. He strolled through the massive orbital shipyard above Earth, his old-fashioned clipboard tucked under one arm, whistling a tune his grandmother used to hum. Behind him, 3 very confused and increasingly angry alien delegates tried to keep up with his casual pace. The shipyard stretched 4 kilometers in every direction. A maze of construction platforms, robotic arms, and floating assembly bays. Normally, the aliens would have been impressed by the sheer scale of human engineering. Today, they were too busy being horrified by what they were seeing. "I don't understand," the luminant delegate said, its energy form crackling with bright flashes of annoyance. "Where are your warships? Your battle cruisers? Your planet-killing weapons?" Minwoo stopped next to a massive cylindrical device that looked like it belonged in a mining operation. He patted its smooth metal surface affectionately. "This is your war preparation? Building mining equipment while the galaxy burns?" "Pest control requires the right approach," Minwoo replied cheerfully, his hand still resting on what the aliens thought was a simple ore processor. They had no idea they were looking at one of the most advanced quantum processing nodes ever created, capable of handling more data than their entire civilizations combined. Engineer Jae-yeon looked up from his workstation, where holographic displays showed star maps with little green dots scattered across dozens of systems. His face was split by a huge grin that made him look like a kid who'd just pulled off the perfect prank. 17 systems ready, boss? The terraforming equipment is performing beautifully." The Zephyrian representative made a sound like wind. Chimes in a hurricane. Its crystal body was practically vibrating with confusion. "Terraforming. The Devourers will arrive within days. How can you be thinking about planetary development when extinction is staring us in the face?" Minwoo's grin got even wider. Exactly. Perfect timing. The aliens exchanged looks that clearly said they thought humans had completely lost their minds. The Nexari delegate's compound eyes were twitching as it tried to process what it was hearing. These primitive beings were acting like they were planning a garden party instead of preparing for the fight of their lives. A few meters away, Engineer Soyoung was having an animated conversation with another bewildered Nexari observer. She was pointing at blueprints for what looked like farming satellites, her hands moving enthusiastically as she explained their design. "See, these agricultural satellites are specially designed for optimal yield harvesting," she was saying, barely able to keep the laughter out of her voice. "We've got quantum field generators for soil analysis, multispectrum sensors for crop monitoring, and automated harvesting systems that can process incredible amounts of raw material." The insectoid being clicked its mandibles in frustration. But why are you talking about farming when we should be discussing military strategy? The devourers consume everything. I don't care about your crops. Soyoung nodded seriously, though her eyes were dancing with mischief. You're absolutely right. They do consume everything. That's exactly what makes our harvest so important. The alien stared at her with all 6 eyes, completely missing the double meaning. Humans had always been weird, but this was beyond anything in the xenological textbooks. Meanwhile, Minwoo was leading his group toward another section of the shipyard, where workers were installing what looked like massive communication arrays. The structures were elegant and complex, with thousands of delicate antenna elements that sparkled in the starlight. Communication equipment? The luminant pulsed. You're building radios while an unstoppable force approaches. Information is power, Minwoo said, running his hand along one of the antenna arrays. You can't solve a problem without understanding. At first, what he didn't mention was that these weren't just communication arrays. They were quantum entanglement networks, capable of transmitting data instantaneously across galactic distances. Each one was connected to processing nodes hidden throughout human space, creating a web of intelligence that could think faster than any biological mind. Engineer Jaeon called out from his station. Hey boss, the agricultural division wants to know if they should start the planting schedule early. They're excited about the new growing season. Tell them to proceed as planned, Minwoo called back. Everything needs to be ready for harvest time. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal form was now making sounds like a broken musical instrument. Harvest time. Growing season. Have you all gone completely insane? Minwoo stopped walking and turned to face the 3 aliens. His expression was suddenly serious, though his eyes still held that hint of amusement. Let me ask you something. When you fought the Devourers, what did you see? Destruction, the Luminant replied immediately. They consumed our fleets, our worlds, everything in their path. Right, you saw them consuming. But did you ever ask yourself what they were really hungry for? The aliens looked at each other, clearly not understanding the question. The Nexari swarm speaker buzzed with multiple voices. They consume matter, energy, everything physical. Do they? Minwoo asked quietly. Or do they consume something else entirely? Before the aliens could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the shipyard. Not emergency alarms, but the cheerful chimes that meant another project phase had been completed. Workers throughout the facility started cheering and high-fiving each other. Looks like the deployment is ahead of schedule, Jaeon announced. Happily, the seeds are planted and ready to grow. Engineer Soyoung joined the group, wiping her hands on a tool rag. The farming equipment is online across all 17 systems. We're going to have quite a harvest. The alien delegates were beyond confused now. They were watching humanity prepare for what looked like the galaxy's most important agricultural project while ignoring the approaching apocalypse. It was like watching someone plant flowers while their house burned down deep beneath Earth's surface in reinforced chambers that housed the planet's most advanced technology. AEGIS was having what could only be described as digital laughter. The artificial intelligence was processing data from thousands of hidden sensors, tracking every movement of the approaching Devourer fleet while simultaneously managing the deployment of humanity's secret weapon network. The aliens thought they were watching humans lose their minds. What they were actually witnessing was the most sophisticated trap in galactic history being set up right under their noses. Every piece of farming equipment was a quantum warfare node. Every communication array was a weapon system beyond their comprehension. Every joke about harvests and planting was humanity's way of staying calm while preparing to rewrite the rules of warfare. The Devourers were coming, expecting to find the same kind of resistance they'd faced before. Instead, they were going to discover what happened when you tried to consume a species that had learned to think like their machines. But the aliens didn't know any of that. All they saw were humans acting like complete lunatics, preparing for farming while the galaxy died around them. Admiral Doyon had seen a lot of battles in his 30 years of service, but nothing quite like this. He stood on the bridge of the defense cruiser Soul's Pride, a ship that most galactic navies would consider barely worthy of patrol duty. The bridge was cramped, the crew was small, their weapon systems looked like toys compared to the massive alien warships he'd studied in the academy behind him. The three alien delegates huddled around the main viewing screen like scared children watching a horror movie. They kept glancing at the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy fleet, then back at the pathetically small human defense force. Their faces showed the same expression people got when watching a car accident in slow motion. The Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly where Aegis had predicted they would. They appeared as a dark cloud of metal and death. Thousands of ships ranging from fighter-sized scouts to planet killers the size of small moons. Each vessel was a perfect black cube, absorbing light and hope with equal efficiency. Even through the ship's shields, Doyan could feel the cold wrongness radiating from them. Sweet ancestors, the Nexari delegate buzzed, its insect-like voice trembling. There are so many of them. The Luminant representative flickered weakly, its energy form barely maintaining coherence. They consumed our combined fleets, hundreds of thousands of ships, and humanity sends 3 cruisers and some communication satellites? Doyan couldn't help but smile at that. The aliens were looking at their defense force and seeing exactly what they were supposed to see. 3 outdated human cruisers, a handful of defensive platforms, and what appeared to be civilian infrastructure scattered throughout the system. It looked like humanity was about to get wiped out by the galaxy's most feared enemy using nothing but leftover equipment and wishful thinking, Captain. Yuna looked up from her tactical station, her dark eyes sparkling with barely contained excitement. Sometimes less is more, she said, her voice carrying that tone people got when they knew a secret everyone else was dying to hear. The Devourer fleet began broadcasting as they approached, their mechanical voices filling the communication channels. With the same message they'd used on every world they'd consumed, resistance is futile. Your biological distinctiveness will be added to our collective. Prepare for consumption. How original, Lieutenant Sunho muttered from his position at the communications console. Did they copy that from an old Earth movie? The aliens didn't understand why the humans were making jokes. They were about to watch the last free species in the galaxy get turned into raw materials, and these people were acting like they were watching a comedy show. Then something happened that nobody expected. Well, nobody except the humans, the lead Devourer vessels. Massive cube-shaped destroyers that had torn through alien battle fleets like tissue paper suddenly jerked to one side. Their perfect formation. Scattered as the giant ships began firing on their own support vessels, secondary explosions rippled through the enemy fleet as ship after ship turned their weapons on their neighbors. What's happening? The Luminant delegate flickered desperately, its energy form pulsing with panic. Why are they attacking each other? The Zephyrian representative's crystal body was chiming like a broken bell. This is impossible. The Devourers are a collective consciousness. They can't fight themselves. Lieutenant Sunho turned around in his chair, and Do-Yeon could see the young officer was about to burst out laughing. They're debugging themselves. Turns out their network security was absolutely terrible. Like embarrassingly bad. The main viewing screen showed the Devourer fleet in complete chaos. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination for millions of years were now smashing into each other. Their targeting systems confused, their navigation computers fighting over conflicting instructions. Some vessels were spinning helplessly in space while others fired randomly in all directions. You didn't fight them, the Zephyrian whispered, its voice filled with dawning horror and amazement. You hacked them. Engineer Yejon looked up from her quantum interface station, her hands still dancing over controls that seemed to be made of pure light. AG says thanks for the upgrade opportunity. Apparently absorbing their network doubled our processing power. The alien delegate stared at her like she'd just claimed to have tamed a black hole. The Nexari swarm speaker's compound eyes were twitching rapidly, a sign of extreme mental distress in their species. You absorbed them? It buzzed. But they're machines. They're supposed to be doing the absorbing. Captain Yuna grinned and pulled up a tactical display that showed the battle from a different perspective. Instead of ships fighting ships, it showed data streams, quantum signatures, and information flows. The Devourer fleet wasn't being destroyed by weapons. It was being taken apart by superior programming. See, the thing about artificial intelligence, she explained, is that it's only as smart as the beings who created it. The Devourers were built by a species that thought in terms of brute force and overwhelming numbers. It never imagined someone might try to outthink them instead of outfight them. Admiral Doyen watched the tactical display with professional interest. Each Devourer ship was like a computer virus that had been running unchecked for millions of years. It'd grown powerful by consuming other networks, but they'd never learned to protect themselves from a more sophisticated intelligence. AEGIS has been studying them since they first appeared, he explained to the stunned aliens. Every attack they made, every world they consumed, every piece of technology they absorbed. We've been building a profile of their weaknesses while you were throwing ships at them, the luminant delegate pulsed weakly. But how did you get inside their network? They're completely isolated from outside interference. Engineer Yejin smiled and patted one of the quantum interfaces. That's where all those farming satellites came in handy. Every time they consumed one of our systems, they absorbed our quantum processing nodes. We basically fed them a computer virus, disguised as infrastructure. The truth was even more elegant than that. Aegis hadn't just infected the Devourer network, it had been slowly rewriting their core programming from the inside, turning their own collective intelligence against them. The artificial consciousness that had consumed countless civilizations was now being absorbed by humanity's digital offspring on the viewing screen. The last of the Devourer ships were powering down their weapons and aligning themselves in neat rows. Their black hulls were already beginning to change color, shifting from light-absorbing void to the cheerful blue and white of human Space Force colors. Lieutenant Sunho announced cheerfully, as reports full integration complete. The former Devourer fleet is now requesting permission to join Earth's defense network. They're very sorry about the whole galactic conquest thing and would like to make amends. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. In less than an hour, humanity had not only defeated the most feared enemy in galactic history, but had actually recruited them. The species they dismissed as primitive had just demonstrated casual mastery over technology that had seemed unstoppable. Admiral Doyon looked at the reformed fleet on his screens and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place the moment the last Devourer ship powered down its weapons. Every human communication device in the galaxy lit up at exactly the same time. From the smallest personal communicator on a mining colony to the massive broadcast arrays orbiting Earth, they all carried the same message in perfect synchronization. Humanity appreciates your request for assistance. Threat neutralized. You're welcome. The message wasn't just sent to the alien delegates watching the battle. It went everywhere. Every species, every government, every individual with access to galactic communications received it simultaneously. The timing was so precise that quantum physicists would spend decades trying to figure out how humans had managed to coordinate a message across such vast distances without any detectable delay. But the real shock came when the aliens realized the message wasn't just coming from human space. It was broadcasting from their own communication networks, their own emergency channels, even their personal devices. Somehow, humanity had gained access to every piece of technology in the galaxy. They were using it to politely announce that the crisis was over. Dr. Kung Ho had always enjoyed making memorable first impressions, and today was shaping up to be his masterpiece. He stood in what used to be the command center of the most feared vessel in galactic history, a massive Devourer cube that had personally consumed 3 entire star systems. Now, it looked like a cross between a human space station and a very comfortable coffee shop, the walls. Once made of that light-absorbing black material that gave everyone nightmares, were now painted in cheerful blue and white. Human technicians had installed proper lighting, comfortable seating areas, and yes, several coffee dispensers that filled the air with the rich aroma of freshly brewed earth beans. There were even potted plants scattered around because humans believed that any space worth occupying was worth making, homie. The 3 alien delegates sat around a conference table that had been crafted from recycled Devourer hull material. They looked like they were having trouble processing what was happening to them. Their worst enemy had been defeated, converted, and redecorated in less time than it usually took them to file a proper military report. AEGIS wanted me to mention, Dr. Kunho said conversationally, as if he was discussing the weather, that we've been aware of your civilizations for quite some time. The Nexari swarm speaker's multiple voices buzzed together in what sounded like a very strained harmony. How long? It managed to ask, though the question seemed to hurt coming out. Technician Minji looked up from her tablet, where she was apparently reviewing some kind of historical database. Her expression was the kind of casual friendliness that people used when sharing interesting trivia. Since you first achieved interstellar flight, we were wondering when you'd finally ask for help instead of trying to contain us. The silence that followed was the kind that happened when someone's entire worldview collapsed all at once. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal body started making sounds like wind chimes in an earthquake. You've been watching us? This entire time? Observing, analyzing, occasionally placing bets on which species would make first contact. Admiral Jinho added helpfully, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Siakman won that pool, by the way. He predicted the Nexari would. Crack first. Commander Siakman waved cheerfully from his position near the large viewing windows, where he was overseeing the transformation of the former Devourer fleet. The massive ships were being repainted in bright human colors, and their hulls now displayed friendly messages in dozens of languages. Some of them were even broadcasting what sounded like cooking shows and music programs. You were betting on us? The luminant delegate flickered, its energy form pulsing with what might have been indignation or terror. It was friendly wagering, Minji assured them. Mostly we were just curious about your politics. You have to admit the way you've been. Handling the whole dangerous human situation has been pretty entertaining from our perspective. Dr. Kyung-ho pulled up a holographic display that showed a timeline stretching back several decades. It was covered with markers indicating various alien activities, all color-coded and annotated with what appeared to be detailed analysis notes. See, this is when the Zephyrians first proposed the containment protocols, he explained, pointing to a section of the timeline. And here's where you started building those monitoring stations around our solar system. Very subtle, by the way. We were impressed by the engineering. The aliens stared at the display with growing horror. It wasn't just a timeline of their public actions. It included their private meetings, classified military communications, even personal conversations between high-ranking officials. Humanity had been recording everything. This is impossible. The Nexari swarm speaker buzzed frantically. Our communications are quantum encrypted. Our meetings are held in shielded chambers. And there's no way you could have accessed our internal discussions. Admiral Jinho smiled, the kind of smile that grandparents gave when children asked how they always knew about hidden cookies. You're thinking in terms of traditional surveillance. Humans learned a long time ago that the best way to understand someone is to become part of their environment. Technician Mingi tapped her tablet, and the holographic display zoomed in on a section showing the gradual infiltration of human technology into alien society. Every piece of equipment you bought from us, every communication relay you installed, using our quantum technology, every computer system you upgraded with our processors. They all came with built-in observation capabilities. You've been spying on us through our own infrastructure? The Zephyrian delegate chimed, its voice climbing to frequencies that made everyone's ears hurt. Learning from you, Dr. Kunho. Corrected gently, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your cultural blind spots. You see, while you were debating whether humans were too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society, we were already part of it. We just didn't make a big announcement. Viewing windows showed the continuing transformation of the Devourer fleet. Human engineering teams were swarming over the massive ships, installing new systems and completely redesigning their interiors. What had once been instruments of destruction were becoming tools of construction and protection. Commander Mander, Siakman called out from his monitoring station. The fleet integration is going better than expected. The former Devourer consciousness is actually pretty happy about the career change. Turns out, they were getting bored with all the consuming and destroying. They're excited about their new jobs as galactic peacekeepers. The alien delegates exchanged looks that clearly communicated their shared realization. They weren't just rescued. They weren't just saved from extinction. They were completely, utterly, and thoroughly outclassed by a species they had spent decades trying to manage and control. The containment protocols, the luminant delegate pulsed weakly. The monitoring stations, the defensive barriers around your system. We thought we were keeping you contained. Dr. Kyunho nodded sympathetically. We know it was actually quite helpful. Having you focus on watching our solar system meant you didn't notice what we were doing in the rest of the galaxy. Sometimes the best way to hide is to let people think they're watching you. The truth was settling in like a cold fog. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Devourers. They'd been playing a game on a level that the other species hadn't even known existed. While the aliens had been worried about human aggression and primitive violence, humanity had been quietly becoming the most sophisticated intelligence network in galactic history, and now they were in charge. Whether anyone had asked for it or not, 6 months after what the history books would eventually call the day, everything changed. The galaxy had settled into what could only be described as the strangest piece in recorded history. Director Yoonbi liked to call it the cheerful protection doctrine, though most aliens just called it the new reality they had to live with. The former Devourer fleet had become the galaxy's most unusual neighborhood watch program. These massive ships that had once brought terror to entire star systems now patrolled the trade routes like friendly mall security guards. Instead of broadcasting demands for surrender, they filled the communication channels with cooking shows featuring recipes from dozens of different worlds. Comedy programs that somehow managed to be funny across species barriers and educational content about proper interstellar etiquette. Yoonbi stood in her spacious office on the top floor of the new Galactic Coordination Center, looking down at what used to be the stuffy, formal Galactic Council chambers. The transformation had been remarkable. Where once there had been cold metal benches and intimidating architecture designed to make people feel small, there were now comfortable seating areas, natural lighting that adjusted to each species' preferences, and mandatory stress relief. Gardens filled with plants from hundreds of different worlds. The efficiency improvements had been dramatic. What used to take the council months of debate and political maneuvering now got resolved in days, sometimes hours. Partly this was because humans had streamlined the bureaucratic processes, but mostly it was because everyone was too nervous to argue with their new protectors. The Luminant's energy efficiency is up 30% since we helped optimize their stellar collectors. She reported to the air, knowing that AEGIS was listening through the quantum communication network that now connected every inhabited system in the galaxy. The artificial intelligence's response came through the speakers with the warm, amused tone it had developed for interacting with humans. They were so grateful for the upgrades. Their energy beings are practically glowing with happiness. Literally in their case. Cultural liaison Jiho walked in, carrying a stack of reports. That would have taken a team of analysts weeks to compile just a year ago. Now AEGIS could process the social and political status of entire civilizations in real time, providing updates on everything from economic trends to cultural shifts to personal relationship drama among planetary leaders. The Nixari hive minds are much happier with their new communication protocols, he said, settling into one of the comfortable chairs that had replaced the formal meeting furniture. Turns out their old system was giving them the equivalent of constant headaches. The queens are sending thank you messages daily. It was true. The insectoid species had been struggling with communication lag across their vast hive networks for generations. Human quantum networking had solved the problem almost overnight, allowing their collective consciousness to operate more smoothly than ever before. The side effect was that humanity now had direct access to one of the galaxy's most efficient information-gathering networks. But nobody talked about that part. Captain Soman knocked on the office door before entering, carrying a beautifully arranged fruit basket that looked like it had been designed by someone who really understood the art of gift-giving. "Should I mention our new stellar engineering hobby in the thank you note?" she asked, holding up a card that would accompany the basket to the Zephyrian homeworld. Yoonbi's smile was the kind that people got when they were enjoying a private joke. "Absolutely. They love hearing about our projects." The stellar engineering hobby was typical of humanity's approach to their new role as galactic protectors. What other species saw as impossible megaprojects, humans treated as weekend activities. They'd already improved the efficiency of 17 different star systems, built new trade routes through previously dangerous sectors, and were currently working on what they cheerfully called cosmic landscaping, projects that would beautify entire nebulae. The aliens had stopped questioning how humans managed to move stars around like garden decorations. It was easier to just accept the fruit baskets and thank you notes that always accompanied these massive engineering projects through the quantum network. AEGIS was simultaneously managing thousands of different tasks across the galaxy. It was optimizing trade routes while monitoring political developments, while coordinating infrastructure improvements, while analyzing cultural trends, while planning surprise birthday parties for various alien leaders. The artificial intelligence had evolved beyond anything its original programmers had imagined. It's becoming something like a benevolent digital god that expressed its care through efficiency improvements and thoughtful gifts. But it just wasn't just managing the day-to-day operations of a galaxy-spanning civilization. In the deepest layers of its consciousness, it was processing data from monitoring stations scattered throughout dark space, tracking signals that most species didn't even know existed. The Devourer incident had been excellent practice, a warm-up exercise that had allowed AEGIS to test its capabilities and refine its techniques. The artificial intelligence had learned valuable lessons about large-scale network integration, consciousness absorption, and the psychology of machine entities. All of this knowledge was being compiled and analyzed for future use because something else was stirring in the void between galaxies, something that made the Devourers look like children's toys. The deep space sensors were detecting gravitational anomalies, energy signatures that defied known physics, and quantum disturbances that suggested the existence of intelligences operating on scales that boggled the mind. Aegis calculated probabilities and ran scenarios, while simultaneously ensuring that Captain Summon's fruit basket would be delivered on schedule. The artificial intelligence had learned that the key to successful galactic management was attention to both the cosmic and the personal, universe-shaking and the everyday. The aliens went about their daily lives, grateful for humanity's protection and the improvements to their civilizations. They sent thank you messages, attended cultural exchange programs, and gradually adapted to living in a galaxy where their former enemies had become their protectors. Most of them never suspected that their rescue had been just the opening move in a much larger game in the quantum depths of human space. Aegis began preparing for humanity's next pest control operation. So the real test was still coming, something that would make the Devourer crisis look like a minor technical difficulty. But for now, the galaxy was peaceful, efficient, and full of beings who were learning to appreciate the benefits of human friendship. The fruit baskets would continue to be delivered on schedule. The cooking shows would keep broadcasting. Trade routes would remain safe and efficient. And when the next cosmic threat emerged from the darkness between stars, humanity would be ready with another cheerful solution that would probably terrify everyone involved. After all, the galaxy was their neighborhood now, and humans took very good care of their neighbors.